So, I wanted to talk today about creating characters, good writing. And I don't know if this is going to somehow become like a series of vlogs that I'll do about writing in almost any medium, really, because creating a character works in any medium. The rules are more or less the same, interesting, likable. But for this discussion, I'm going to use a specific example because I recently watched my friend Starman do up an LP, a Let's Play, of the Gabriel Knight 20th Anniversary Edition, which is fun. You should go watch him play it. Starman, Gabriel Knight. It's on YouTube. Um, and I was reminded by watching that replay how much I love the character of Gabriel Knight. And I actually decided to sit down and think about why. So, some of you may not know Gabriel Knight, and that's fine. It was an adventure game. It had 3 games in the series. Each game was radically different than the last in terms of how the game played and looked. But the story is fairly consistent. The story of Gabriel Knight is essentially this. He is a barely successful author who lives in New Orleans. He's in his mid-30s. Very charming, but very flaky, kind of a womanizer. All in all, he's not the greatest guy, but he's the kind of guy you absolutely want to be friends with, but you would not trust to house sit for you. Are we getting there? He's very charming. He's very funny. What happens throughout the course of this first game, which is, by the way, one of the best adventure games there is. The story is fantastic. The game is fun to play. I love Gabriel Knight 1. But Gabriel discovers that he's actually part of a long legacy. It's a German bloodline of shadow hunters. Their mission, their job, is to protect humanity from the creatures that live in the shadows, werewolves, vampires, these sorts of things. Now, his grandfather fled Germany to escape this fate, to escape being part of this family line. Changed his name, came to America, and there was also a family curse. So his grandfather died young, his father died young. Gabriel's about to die young when he uncovers this true story about who his family is. And then from there, he has to undo the family curse and take up the mantle of the family. The family role is called a Schattenjäger, shadow hunter. So there's just a brief synopsis of the character. Now, what makes Gabriel Knight stand out? And this is the part where, if you're creating a character, these are things to keep in mind as you're writing or as you're working in any medium. For me, there are three things that really make Gabriel stand out as opposed to other characters. And the first is probably my favorite. Gabriel does not ever decry his destiny, right? He finds out he is the chosen child of fate. A common trope you see in every fantasy novel. You are the one. Admittedly, he's kind of old for a child. He's in his 30s. But he finds out he's got this big responsibility put on him. His family has a destiny that he has to fulfill. At no point in the series, in all 3 games, and things get bad in the 3 games, at no point in the series does Gabriel ever say, I didn't ask for this. This was forced upon me. And almost every one of these Child of Destiny style characters who find out they're the prophesied hero of legend has that moment. It is such a cliche. And it's not an unfair cliche, I suppose. I would imagine if you took 10 people and gave them destinies that they had no control over, most of them would at some point complain about it. But it's refreshing to see that 10th one who doesn't. It's refreshing that Gabriel at no point tries to weasel out of his destiny, especially since we're shown that he's kind of a weasel to start with. But then when he realizes something important is on the line, he gets down to business. I love that about the character. It is so refreshing. It is so... Oh, it's a breath of fresh air. I'm going to keep saying fresh, apparently. That Gabriel doesn't have that moment of, why me? I didn't ask for this. No, if this is what I'm supposed to do, then I'm going to do it. The second thing is Gabriel's approach. Gabriel doesn't have the training to be a Schottenjäger. It's handed off to him with almost no information about what he can do and how he's supposed to do it, where to do it. Gabriel's general approach to a problem is just to charge in, go in until the water is right about at his neck, and then figure out how to get out. And it's great because so often now we see heroes who have special training. Like Taken, the guy has a very particular set of skills. Or you think MacGyver, who could get himself out of any situation with a hairpin and a can of hairspray, right? The A-Team built a tank that one time. You're used to heroes who have something that makes them heroic. They're good at something. Gabriel really has no skills. He's got a magic talisman, but he doesn't even understand how it works. It's mostly defensive, and he doesn't know when it will or won't defend him and from what. So he doesn't even rely on that. He just wades in to the situation as deep as he can get, and then fights his way out. And it's good for us as the audience, because, well, let me use an example. John Constantine, the Hellblazer comics. Now, I like the character of John Constantine. He's a fun character. But a lot of the early Hellblazer comics had this issue where, at the end of the storyline, John Constantine would save the day with magic, and you never really understood how he did it, or what happened. You just know, oh, okay, the danger's over. It was Deus Ex Machina every time, because we didn't have a clear understanding of how the magic works, only he did. There was one particular time that the entire country of England, the ley lines were getting corrupted with masculine energy, and the solution was for him to have a threesome, problem solved. Because two women, and it's absurd because you don't know A, what's going to work, and then when he does something, you don't know how it worked. You're just supposed to be like, oh, okay, day is saved, and then you have to go back and read into it and interpret it and try and backwards engineer something that makes sense for you. Whereas with Gabriel just wading in, unprepared, without a clue, and then solving his way out of it, you're with him along for the ride. He doesn't possess any information that you, as the audience, don't possess. So there's a really close bond with him as he's going through the problems, because you and he have the same amount of information. You're in the same boat. And I like that because it connects you to the character. The third thing I like about Gabriel Knight, the third thing that makes him stand out as a good character for me, he's a good guy, right? He fights against voodoo and werewolves. He's a hero. But he's not a noble hero, and he's not a stupid hero. My friend Starman described it as chaotic good. Apparently Gabriel is a prime textbook example of chaotic good. There is a moment in the first game when you're raiding the headquarters of the evil voodoo cult, and you come across a room full of money. It's gold bars and stacks of cash. It's their emergency supply of money. And you're playing this game, and you can have Gabriel just fill up his trench coat with money. He just takes this money from the voodoo cult and fills up his coat. Which is kind of fun, but you find out in the second game that's canonical. That happened. Like, whether or not you actually did it, Gabriel did it. That's how the story goes. Gabriel wanders into this room full of money that belongs to the bad guys and goes, you know what? I've got a good use for this. And he uses it to restore his ancient family's castle. And I like... So often you see the good guy has to be stupid. Because he's the good guy. He has to play fair, and he has to play by the rules, even if it hurts him. And I've never really liked that. I wrote a comic book, and I swear one day it's either going to be turned into a regular book or published. But at one point in the comic book, two of the main characters, the good guys, are confronting the main bad guy. And the main bad guy points out 2-on-1 is not exactly fair, is it? To which the main hero says, just because I'm the good guy doesn't mean I have to play fair. I get that there's a slippery slope, and there's a gray between good and evil. But there are times when who is good and who is bad is pretty clear, especially in stories. The voodoo cult that's going around murdering people is bad. Gabriel, who's trying to stop them from murdering people, is good. So why shouldn't he help himself to some of their money? Who does that hurt? It's evil, dirty money. He's going to use it for a good purpose. It's the ends justify the means, which again I know is a slippery slope, but I honestly think there are times where it works. And for Gabriel has those times where it works, and he takes advantage of the situation. Which again, I think serves to make him more identifiable, more relatable. Because who among us, given that position, you are now in a room full of money, belonging to really, really bad guys that you're about to take down. Best case scenario, all of the money that's in here is going to end up in the hands of the police and the government. There is absolutely no way anybody's going to know if you took a couple handfuls of cash. You're going to take some money, aren't you? Almost every one of us would. And that's part of making Gabriel a real person. He's not a noble, self-sacrificing hero. He's on the side of good. He's on the side of the angels. That doesn't mean he has to be one. So, when you're creating your characters, it's always a good idea to look to the common stereotypes and question them. Does my child of Destiny have to have that scene where he goes, "Oh, why me?" Does my hero have to be specially trained through some backstory so that he can handle this situation? Or can he just try and roll through it? Sure, he'll come out of it a little bit rougher, but maybe he can make it anyway. Does my character have to do the right thing when nobody's watching? Does my character have to have a rigidly defined sense of right and wrong? Don't give your character attributes just because that's the way you think they're supposed to be. Don't make your main character charming and handsome because he's a main character. He's supposed to be charming and handsome. I mean, Gabriel is, but I'm going broader now. Question it. Because the characters that defy the tropes and the stereotypes, they're the most interesting. They're the ones that stand out. And Gabriel is a really good example of that. So there you go. When creating your characters, question them. Question why you're making them the way you are. And if you don't have a good reason for it, and it looks like all the other characters you've ever seen, change it. Just a little advice from me to you. Plus I get to talk about Gabriel Knight, who, if he was real, I'd totally have a man crush on. Anyway, I'll see you guys next time.